Individuation is a term that was coined by Carl Jung, a Swiss psychiatrist. And the simplest way, I think, of defining the word is the fulfillment of your potential. It's for you to become all that you have within you to become. So it's a process that follows very particular stages. Ultimately, as Jung describes the word in his book, Psychological Types, the ultimate goal of individuation is that you become indivisible. In other words, you reach a point of being wholly unique, wholly yourself. You know, that's an excellent question. And I think it's answered by Jung's words himself, where he very often uses this phrase. He calls it the urge to individuate. That's a very interesting, it's a very telling word. I think the most direct answer I can give you is no, we don't have a choice. All things evolve. Now, they evolve, but they don't evolve in a steady pattern. It's more like 2 steps back and 3 steps forward if you're lucky. And when I say all things evolve, you know, from an alchemical perspective, I mean not just human nature, but human beings, but all of nature evolves. Now, you know, we're going through problems of global warming, you know, but we forget that there was an ice age and things die, but the earth has this, you know, profound capacity to regenerate. And sometimes things, as Hermann Hesse said, have to die before a new world can be born. The difference with individuation, and it's the catalyst that facilitates that natural evolutionary process, is consciousness. Is consciousness. Is by bringing consciousness to anything, it changes not just the psyche, but changes the physical behavior of matter. So in healing, you know, oftentimes, you know, it's not about, well, you've got this problem, why don't you do this? Or have you tried that and do it differently? You see, that's the Western mentality, you know, very kind of masculinely driven. When sometimes we forget the most simple thing is to stay still and pay attention. You know, it's very interesting to me why the alchemists chose a rock, a stone, what they call the lapis, as their, you know, archetypal symbol of higher consciousness, of wholeness. And I pondered that, you know, why a rock? You know, why not a flower or a butterfly? All very apt symbols for these transformational processes. One day I was reading one of my favorite authors, Lyle Watson. He's, among other things, a biologist. And he was writing about rocks. And he said something to the effect that the secret of survival, why rocks are able to survive as long, to exist as long as they do, is owed to the fact that they stay still. And it clicked just like that. I go, wow. He wasn't talking about alchemy, but I realized that it's that stillness, you know, because the mind is very, very busy. But if we can still the mind, we can sharpen the acuity of consciousness. And as it says in the Bible, you know, we can, for those who can hear will hear, those who will see, and we are able then to see the true nature of things clearly. The nature of mind is to be busy. um, Generally speaking, in alchemy and even in Jungian psychology, the mind is very restless because it is described and associated with spirit. And the nature of spirit, which, as I said earlier, has to do with the masculine, and if you recall, I said one word I would apply to describe the masculine is doing. So the mind is and of course we have to differentiate between mind and brain, but to leave that aside for the moment, mind is the brain. The mind is doing what it's supposed to do. Just like the heart, for as many years as we're granted living in this life, has to beat and circulate the blood, the mind is circulating thoughts. Now, we just can't talk about mind without understanding that mind is not the same as brain. The brain, of course, is that instrument that processes our cognitions. But mind is not contained in our head. The mind is grander than that. The universal mind implies that there is universal intelligence, and that we can tap into that intelligence. This goes back to what I was talking about, gnosis. Gnosis is this direct understanding with nothing in between of what true knowledge is. That kind of mind is available to all of us, but it doesn't come on a silver platter, it comes on a golden platter. You have to develop your self-discipline and take command of your instincts. You have to learn how to tame the mind, and ultimately how to find stillness. To be able to collapse the membrane, if you will, that separates our egoistic consciousness from the universal mind. That universal mind sometimes is called nous. And again, when we're able even to catch momentary glimmers of nous and the universal mind, because it's not to say that you attain it and you're there, and unless you're a saint, but people, I think in general, I find this even in therapy, psychotherapy, they will have moments when those divisions, those things that separate us, for whatever the reason, sometimes it's through deliberate action and sometimes not. It really is a blessing, a benediction, and you know it, and then you have this full experience of being one, not just one with people, but just this blissful sense of being one with everything. And everything that, now we're beyond moral value. So it's not like, we're in heaven where all things are supposedly good. We've transcended the opposites. It's selfless love. It's a pure state of transcendental love. For me, there is no better metaphor for the challenges that we are faced and the opportunities that are before us in this time and in this place than alchemy. None. Now, why do I say that? because I know of no better or older discipline that addresses both the material world of matter and the numinous world of psyche and spirit, and aims to integrate them. No better metaphor. Now, alchemy is, is an old term and has old connotations. But when we look at some of the things that are going on in microchemistry and quantum physics, cloning, to my mind, not only are these scientists really practicing some form of alchemy, but all they have really are doing in the wider historical context is that they are materializing the intuitions and the hunches of the alchemists. What the alchemists didn't have was the technology that we now have to substantiate that some of these recipes, these formulas of the alchemists, do in fact can be shown to exist in the physical world. However, and it's a big caveat, because one of these big challenges that I referred to is that what's lacking and what needs to happen for scientists today is to reintroduce spirit, reintroduce soul into their work. One is as incomplete as the other, whereas the alchemists did not have the advanced technologies that we possess. The real threat is that we, having the technology to do all these quite remarkable things, without a sense of soul and spirit, ultimately, we will not be able to serve humanity in a dignified way. So why alchemy? That's one answer to the question. Another answer is, now this comes back to Jung. Jung began studying alchemy late in age. He spent about 30 years of the end of his life studying it. And it came at high price, because a lot of people thought he had gone too far this time. But the answer to why alchemy for Jung was that he was looking to substantiate, to show evidence that this newfangled idea of individuation, which is something that he had dreamed up, but that it exists and it had existed for millennia. And alchemy was there as almost as a field for data collection to show that what these men, and alchemists were principally men, there were female alchemists, but they didn't have such a need to be known, even though some of their intuitions and insights were profound, were in their laboratory experiments infusing psyche into the laboratory. So even the word, there's a beautiful picture of by Heinrich Kunrak called the Amphitheater of Eternal Wisdom. And it's a beautiful mandala. It's a perfect circle, and it shows an alchemical laboratory. And he shows that even in the word, on the, let's see, the right side of the picture is the physical laboratory, but on the left side is the oratory. So you have labor, and you have the oratory. And in the oratory, you have the kneeling alchemist who is bringing in the spiritual element. And on the other side of the mandala is the work, you know. So here again, we have doing, the physical work, and we have the being, the state of grace without which the work would not be accomplished. Now, what's really fascinating about this particular picture is that right in the middle is a table. And on the table are strewn musical instruments. Now, why I find that particularly interesting is, you know, in today's modern psychology, they're talking about string theory. And I think about the, you know, the strings on these various instruments as a way of harmonizing, just as if this was a picture of a brain, the right and the left hemisphere that's connected by the corpus callosum. So there's the harmonization between the hemispheric portions of the brain that bring us to the one thing again.